Good morning. When I heard that I'd been scheduled to speak on the Sunday before Christmas Sunday, I knew what my talk had to be about, namely getting ready for Christmas. Are you ready for Christmas? Have you done all the baking you're going to do? Have you perhaps got a last-minute gift purchase to think about? What about getting ready to travel for the big day? I don't think anyone would dispute the claim that Christmas is the biggest holiday of the year. The airways are going to be saturated with the voice of Andy Williams singing, "It's the most wonderful time of the year." And for many, it is that. Families make a special effort to be together this time of the year. And I'll wager that, like me, you can remember the best Christmas you ever had. For me, it was the Christmas that my brother and I received our bicycles. We had discovered all the hiding places that our parents used for our Christmas gifts, so we were rarely surprised. But the bicycles were a complete surprise. It turned out they'd been stashed at our neighbors. They weren't brand new because money was tight in our family at the time, but they had been reconditioned and polished up, and they looked really good to us. But what is this day? What's it really all about? It seems to be a curious mixture of pagan customs, religious rituals, all mixed together with a very large volume of commercialism. For many, it's said to be a religious experience which each celebrates in their own way by attending a shopping mall of their choice. Most of us celebrate Christmas on the 25th of December, but the Eastern Church, the Orthodox churches, celebrate on the 6th of January, at least according to our Gregorian calendar. They use the Julian calendar. So which date is correct? Likely neither. We know that shepherds were in the field when Jesus was born, and it is extremely unlikely that shepherds would have been in the field in that part of the world any time near that date. So, why was December the 25th such a popular date? Well, it turns out that there was already a pagan celebration being celebrated at the same time. It had to do with an astronomical event that takes place a few days prior, namely the winter solstice. That's the point at which the sun reaches its lowest declination for those of us in the northern hemisphere. It's the shortest daylight day of the year. Now, primitive peoples understood that their very existence depended on the sun, and so they would light large bonfires to encourage the sun to stop declining into a permanent night condition and return and bless their skies. They must have been doing it right because it seems to have worked every time. We are left with the Christmas tradition of the Yule log. The truth is, no one really knows what time of the year Jesus was born. What about Santa Claus? Although successfully Christianized over the centuries, the tradition of Santa Claus indeed has its roots in pagan customs and culture. So how has the legend of Santa Claus survived all these centuries? In my opinion, it's because it embodies a principle spelled out in our own Bible, namely Matthew 6:4, and spoken about by Jesus. It's the principle of secret giving. It goes, when you give in secret, and your Father in heaven, who sees everything, will reward you openly. So why do we celebrate Christmas after all these years? The answer is simple. The birth of Jesus was and is a big deal. No other event has had such a profound effect on human history. Was it supernatural? Probably not. The Amazing Gospel of Brother Yeshua tells a much more reasonable story about how Jesus was conceived. I believe I've shared that with you on a prior occasion. Was it miraculous? Of course. As the father of 6 children, I can testify to the fact that every birth is a miracle. The author of the Gospel of Matthew certainly understood that Joseph was the father of Jesus, or else he wasted a great deal of effort in laying out the lineage of Jesus through Joseph, all the way back through David and Abraham. But all the religions of that day operating around the Mediterranean had a virgin birth story, and so they came up with one for Jesus. All that got formalized at the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, presided over by one of the most brutal emperors of his day, namely Constantine. You know the old saying, he who writes the minutes gets to say what happens at the meeting. The deification of Jesus was just beginning. Never mind that he resisted this process during his lifetime on this planet. The oral traditions at the time had little bits and pieces about what happened at the birth of Jesus. They knew it took place in Bethlehem. They knew that the shepherds were present. They knew about the wise men. They knew that the birth had taken place in a stable. They assumed it took place in the stable because there was no room at the inn. But the Amazing Gospel testifies that the birth took place in a stable because there was no privacy in the inn, which was upstairs over the stable and consisted of one large room. The Amazing Gospel testifies that the birth was assisted by the innkeeper's wife. They knew about the wise men, the shepherds, and the story got kind of mixed up, and they all get there at the same time, when in fact the arrivals were probably spread over a considerable length of time. I know that you've all heard the story of the school teacher that asked her class to sketch out the nativity scenes, and most sketch scenes with the wise men and the shepherds and Mary and Joseph and the baby all in one sketch. But one little girl drew a picture of a female and a baby and a very large fat man standing behind. And the teacher asked the little girl, "Is that what Joseph looked like?" And she said, "No, that's Round John Virgin." Jesus was more than a year old when the wise men showed up, and they didn't get there following a star. They, in fact, observed an astrological sign related to the birth of a Jewish king. The one nice thing about planetariums is that you can backdate the star position to whatever time you want. And in fact, backdating to that astrological sign gives us a pretty good clue about the birth, when the birth of Jesus actually was. And it was not at 0 BC. So turning back that planetarium, that sky picture tells us about when Jesus was born, about 7 BC. So the wise men knew that the birth was to be in Bethlehem. They thought it was a big deal, and they undertook to travel to Israel to see, or Judea rather, to see what had happened. Who were these wise men? They were likely highly educated and wealthy descendants of Jewish families who never went home after the Babylonian captivity. Because you may recall that the Persians had conquered the Babylonians, and the Jewish community thrived under the Persian Empire, and many of them never did return home. They didn't follow a star. They knew the birth was going to be in Bethlehem, so they knew where they were going. Unfortunately, they were not aware of the political situation that existed at the time, and so they checked in with Herod on the way to Bethlehem. Bad move. When Joseph found out that they had checked in with Herod, he understood very quickly that he needed to make a hasty departure. And one of the wise men did, in fact, aid him in that. The gifts to the baby made by the wise men certainly influenced today's practice of gift giving, particularly since they corresponded to a number of pagan customs. We seem to know a great deal about how the birth of Jesus took place. How many have asked the question, why did the birth of Jesus take place? John 3:16 tells us that he came because God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, that whosoever believed on him should have eternal life. But Jesus taught that we too are sons of God, begotten of the Father, and that his relationship to us is brother, or perhaps teaching master, but not to be worshiped. When the rich young ruler referred to Jesus as good master, Jesus rebuked him and said, "Why callest thou me good? There's only one good, that's God." In the amazing gospel of Brother Yeshua, Jesus testifies that he was not sent into the world, but could not resist the prayers of mankind for help. He recognized an opportunity for himself to grow spiritually, and he understood that he had selected a difficult path. He made the choice to come because he loved us. Our response can only be undying gratitude. Jesus relates in both the Course in Miracles and in the Amazing Gospel that he is yet bound to this planet by his great love for us. When he told his disciples that they could do even greater things than he had done, he wasn't just speaking metaphorically. He knew that he was going to be there. It is entirely appropriate that we celebrate the birth of Jesus each year. Indeed, it would be entirely appropriate if we celebrate the birth of Jesus every day. A few weeks ago, Reverend Pat Moore gave a Thanksgiving sermon which she entitled "The Power of Words." However, a subtitle could have been, had she been writing for a scientific journal, "The Physiological, Psychological, and Paranormal Aspects of Expressing Gratitude." So true. You see, that's the secret of Christmas. If you were not here for that talk, I suggest that you get a copy and listen to it. If you have a computer, it's already on the web, and even if you've heard it before, it would be worth your while to listen to it again, because as I said, it is the secret of Christmas. I suspect a good portion of what we refer to as Christmas spirit is exactly what she was talking about in that talk. Getting ready for Christmas is not just about shopping, baking, buying gifts, trimming trees. Getting ready for Christmas is a spiritual exercise that we begin by remembering the magnitude of the gift and expressing our gratitude for that gift. We say, "Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for your ministry. Thank you for the gift of your love. Thank you for everything that you did for us." Remind us once again to share that love with those we come in contact with. So what should Christmas be about? How should we celebrate? Many of you are old enough to remember Art Linkletter. He had a marvelous TV program interviewing children. And some of you may remember that he wrote a wonderful book, a bestseller, called "Kids Say the Darndest Things." And I recall once watching an interview during the Christmas season, and he was basically asking children what Christmas meant to them. And he got the answers that you would normally expect from children, mostly about what they expected to get for Christmas. But one little girl enthusiastically replied, "It's a birthday party for Jesus." So it is. So it should be. Christmas can be the most wonderful time of the year if we remember that Jesus really is the reason for the season. If we allow the gratitude that we feel to float to the surface and express itself in sharing love with others, especially those less fortunate than we. I don't know about you, but I'm getting to that point in my life where I've lost a good deal of interest in getting more stuff. I find that I'm spending way too much time taking care of the stuff that I already have. One sign of maturity is coming to the realization that it's a lot more fun to give than it is to get. The custom of gift giving instituted by the Magi has survived to this day. We give gifts to our family and gifts to those less fortunate. Giving is the way we express gratitude for the wonderful gift given to us by Jesus, namely his ministry. However, I do have some advice for the men in our group. There are certain rules that you need to observe when you're gifting your spouse or significant other. Rule 1, do not buy gifts for yourself and pretend they are for her. You won't need to tell her how much use she's going to get out of that 1/4-inch drill that you bought for her, as she will already have used it to drill a 1/4-inch hole in your head for even thinking that she would accept a gift like that. Rule 2, do not buy your wife women's clothing because you think for 1 minute that you have any taste in women's clothing. Your wife understands that she would be arrested for bad taste if she wore anything that you picked out. It is permissible, however, to gift lingerie, providing there's no flannel involved. If you're going to gift lingerie, go to Victoria's Secret and pay what you need to. I should note, however, that the restriction on flannel can be removed if the weather stays cold like it is today. Rule 3, men, you should be aware that bulk quantities of cleaning supplies, such as Tide and Windex, do not count as intimate gifts. You should also pass up that $5 Chia Pet that you saw at Walmart. Rule 4, do not under any circumstances select a no-name perfume on the basis of how it smells to you. To her, it will likely smell like your dirty socks. Stick with the name brands when it comes to perfumes, and be aware that those brands cost considerably more than $2.99. Rule 5, do not buy your wife anything with sharp points or cutting edges, as she will likely use them on you if you violate any parts of rules 1 through 4. Most courts would hold that she was justified in using those instruments against you, particularly if there are very many women on the jury. In closing, let me say that Christmas is very special to me. Perhaps it's because for many years, I was the only Christmas keeper in my home. Jehovah's Witnesses do not celebrate Christmas. I have not had a Christmas tree in my house for more than 50 years. The good news is that I'm now able to celebrate Christmas with my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren. Our family makes a special effort to be together this time of the year. Perhaps it's to make up for all those Christmases that we missed. I'm looking forward to the day. Let me be among the first to wish you a very Merry Christmas.